Real women.
Real talk.
Real messy.
This is Messy Midlife.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Messy Midlife. Hi.
Hi, ladies.
Hi, ladies.
It's good to see you all.
Yes.
We've had a lot going on.
Yes.
Aliza, I'm normally start and ask what's on your mind, right? I want to turn right to you because the reason you weren't with us last week is because you had this really awesome thing that you went to. I'm curious if you're willing to share with us.
Yeah, I am. I was at this really incredible retreat, this group that I'm part of called the Women's Purpose Community. And I was in retreat bliss. Bliss is maybe not the right word. There was a lot of stuff that came up, right? There's a lot of stuff that comes up and a lot of stuff I was thinking about and working through and all of that. And I kind of came out of it in this like revelation epiphany space. And then my dad went into the emergency room Thursday night and was admitted into the hospital. And I spent this last weekend traveling to be at the hospital with him. So I got a little pulled out of it. And I'm just working on resetting and getting back to what I was feeling after that, but also just getting back to life. I think this is the challenge I'm feeling right now, is being pulled in all of these directions, whether positive or negative or easy or challenging, and then coming back to, okay, I'm here. I'm with you guys. I have patience today. Like just getting back into like the flow of life when I feel like I'm being just pulled in all of these different directions. This morning I was sitting and answering messages from patients and sending in prescriptions while on the phone with my dad's hospital, trying to get more information and then reschedule a procedure that he had booked for tomorrow. And just juggling. They're not even balls. I feel like I'm like juggling cacti. Like I don't know. But I did have this really incredible experience at this retreat and I missed you guys, but I was so happy to be there and be part of it. The Women's Purpose Community is this really incredible group of women who are high-level executives, CEOs, entrepreneurs. And yet the group has nothing to do with what we do for a profession. It's not what we do, it's who we are. We meet every month into core groups, our kind of like our little mini families. And then we come together in this huge family once a year. And this was actually my first time at the big retreat with everyone. And Jessica, who's the founder of the community, she's incredible. And so we have this theme for the year that we're working on, and the retreat ends up tying into that. And so this year, the theme was my true authentic selves. And so every month that we meet and we're moving through these different topics, they're all kind of based around this general theme. And the retreat this year was entering my soft era and embracing the divine feminine. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot because, we all obviously balance our divine feminine and divine masculine.
We try.
We try because the divine masculine has benefit too when we embody both. And I think lately in my life, especially with my parenting, this is like the big thing that came up for me, as a single mom with a teenage daughter, really trying to put these like kind of more strict boundaries, consequences, actions in place. And it's almost been feeling like I'm acting because that's not who I truly am. Who I am is a very soft person. Like I'm not the authoritarian. I'm not the drill sergeant. That's not me. That's not what I respond to on the receiving end. And it's not who I am in any of my relationships. And now I can see that in moving through those actions in that way, my daughter was responding just how I would. Like it was repelling her. It was feeling really, really shitty to me to be acting that way. And it wasn't accomplishing anything. She was pushing back as hard as she could because it was exactly what neither of us needed. Yeah. So I had this, I don't know, eye-opening, third eye opening. I don't know what it was. There was this really incredible breathwork session that we were all participating in together. So this room of, 50, 60 women, all in this, communal collaborative breathwork session. And it was all focused on like that sacred feminine rage. Yeah. And just realizing what I needed when I was growing up and the love that I needed was a soft love, unconditional. Sure, we have our parameters that we have to work within, right? And we have our rules in our home and our rules in society and the things that we follow to be good people and to live by our moral and ethical compass. But what my daughter needs is exactly what I needed, right? Which was just the softness, which is so interesting that I ended up then being with my dad a few days after, because my dad was really and still is someone in my life who just he exudes that softness and love and really is for to me like the perfect balance of that divine feminine and divine masculine. And so I just really this week have been shifting how I've been relating to my daughter and seeing what she needs and seeing how I respond. And I've felt worlds better about it. She's felt better. She's responded. She stayed with some family friends over the weekend while I was, in Palm Springs in the hospital with my dad. And usually every time we're in the car, she asks if she can use my phone and she plays music and she's jumping from song to song to song and singing at the top of her lungs. When I picked her up yesterday, she looked at my phone and like put her hand out to pick it up, but then didn't. She goes, actually, like, I don't want to listen to music. Can we just talk?
Wow.
And that's big for her. She's usually just wants the music and the loudness. And so I don't know. I've seen in just a few days the things that I've realized and how I've just made that internal shift in myself really shift her also. And I think I think I'm literally living and learning the definition of pick your battles right now. Like if we're 3 minutes late to school, it's 3 minutes late to school. Her school's not getting upset and giving detention. Why am I freaking out and creating all of this chaos around it? So I don't know, it was just this big reset for me in realizing what I need and look for from my parents, my friends, my sisters, and who I want to be as a mom. I don't know if I told you guys, but we were having a really rough time maybe about a month and a half ago. We were in the car together and we were arguing and we were both getting really emotional, and she cried, and she never cries. And she cried and she said to me, I feel like I have to be perfect for you to love me. And that was like, I don't know, a 4-foot knife into my heart, like, because that's how I felt as a kid. And I just realized like that's the opposite of the mom that I want to be. Right. And obviously with her, it was about like keeping her room clean. It wasn't about her appearance or her accomplishments like it was for me as a child. But I don't know, it just really made me start to have this reset. And so then, walking into this retreat, I said to Jess and to everyone, I said, this was everything I didn't know I needed. But obviously I did know I needed it because I was there. Right. So it was also just like listening to my inner voice and to my inner knowing and really trusting that, because I do know. I think I was telling both of you, the times in my life when I felt like things have gone in a direction that didn't feel good or went out of control or wasn't what I wanted, was when I wasn't listening to my knowing.
Mhm.
That's what just pulls me right out of alignment. I don't know, it's just this lesson all around on just, I know, like, I know what I need. I know what she needs. Like, I know that inherently, and just following that and not blocking out the noise of everything else at times.
Yeah.
So it's just a really profound couple of days and integrating it back into everyday life. So how do I remain calm, right? Saturday morning, I was like, I need you to get out of bed. We have to leave. I have to be at the hospital. It's a 2.5 hour drive. I have to be there ASAP. Like, let's go. But I wasn't freaking out. I wasn't threatening I'm going to take her iPad away. Right? I wasn't like getting worked up. I was like, come on, like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I just stayed calm and she stayed calm and it was fine. I got to the hospital. Everything was fine. So I think just sometimes just stepping back from the pressure of everything having to go exactly how I think it's going to, right?
Mhm.
And
Whereas just,
focusing your attention on your own alignment and how powerful that was to synchronize with her. And it's
yeah,
almost like a microcosm of what we do for each other, right? Like I feel like we get to experience that. We get to help each other come back to ourselves, come back to our own alignment, and why we thought this podcast was a good idea to help create that ripple effect
yeah.
in hopefully, the world where people can remember to come back to themselves, because when we're aligned the way that you just experienced, everything is easier. It might not be easy, right?
But it's
But it,
easier.
but it runs a little bit more smoothly.
Well, I didn't realize how out of alignment I was with myself until I really felt what it was like to be back and where
Yeah.
it felt good to me. Like if you had asked me a week ago, I wouldn't have had the clarity to say, this is not who I am. I'm behaving in a way, I'm acting in a way, I'm speaking in a way that's not me and doesn't feel good to me. I wouldn't have had that clarity because I would have thought, well, this is what I need to do in
Mhm.
order to get this response or this action that I need from her. And it was just totally the opposite.
It's really beautiful, really beautiful. I'm particularly excited. Yeah, I bet it feels really good. I'm really excited to hear more as time goes on about how this plays out with her because it's
Yeah.
already been such tremendous transformation.
Yeah. I think it's just being able to remind myself of that and keep that in my focus and remembering what feels good to me and tapping into when I do need to have that stillness, when I do need to have that rage when it's appropriate and directed at the right
Mhm.
not the right person, but directed in the right way. When I need to be giving versus when I need to be receiving, and just everything we talked about there. I mean, I think even coming home from the retreat, one of the pillars that we talked about was receiving and magnetism. The 3 of us were talking about, well, when are we gonna get together and who's gonna fly where and what are we gonna do? And, you and Jen offered, maybe right now, like, we just need to come to you. And normally I would have said, no, 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 I can make this work. And I just said, yeah, I'm gonna practice that. I'm gonna receive. That is easier for me on like a multitude of levels. And that is what I need, not trying to figure out everything and make everything work in a certain way and have 17 different pieces that I have to put in place, being able to just say, okay, I can just receive other people giving me the ease to maybe just have to put one piece in place. Right. So
Yeah.
I'm practicing. It's shifting, right? It's shifting the way I've been for a lot of years, but that shift feels good. That
Yeah.
shift feels calmer. I'm more in my heart, right? My
Mm,
breath feels like it's easier. Just everything feels better.
yeah.
I feel like we're probably all in a space of really big transition in lots of like micro ways that are adding up, right? Since we last talked, I made a pretty big decision to step down from some things that I have made a commitment to, and I've known, I could tell internally that this was not the right thing for me to do any longer. It might have been the right thing for me to do when I said yes to it, but it no longer is. And I was to step down before I had the excuse I was looking for to step down so that I could deliver the message to myself that I'm allowed to say no just because I know that it's not the right thing for me or it's no longer serving me. I don't have to be in the hospital or have a surgery or anything like that to say no to something. So that's one part of the transition of reconnecting to that intuition that I personally have always, I never called it intuition before, but I've always apparently had it where I just, if I had to think very long about something, it was not the right thing to do. And that's the one thing I knew. If I'm spending a lot of time thinking about this, or if I've got like a list, or if I can explain to you in my brain why it's the right thing to do, then it's not the right thing to do. If I can't explain it, it's the right thing. And this is the path that I need to follow. If I just know, or I just do it. And I've gotten so out of connection with that, and I think in many ways with who I am as a person, sort of like you were talking about, it's just it's been coming to my attention again and again and again about how far I moved away from myself. And several things came to mind with this. So first and foremost, before you joined us, Karen and I were just chit-chatting a little bit while we were waiting for you to be on with us. And we were talking about some things that we're working on together. And Karen said, well, you are this. And I was just like, I am not that. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, it's frustrating when people characterize me as that because I feel like it puts pressure on me to be something that I'm still not, that I've been using as a tool to try and function in the way that I think society wants me to. And that has given me a lot of feedback like, yes, this is good. Yes, do this, be this way. And that's what I'm hearing from you too, because when you said, I'm not this way, my first was like, I would not have said that you're not that way with like your ability to be strong and stern and boundaried and all of those things. That's been more of my experience with you when dealing with things beyond our personal interpersonal relationship. And I'm just curious, Karen, if you're also having some feelings where maybe your mask is starting to come off, or you're like saying, F this, I'm done with this mask.
I mean, since our last meeting last week, I really started looking at that hyper efficiency that I was calling perfectionism, and Jen called me out on that and was like, "I don't know, I don't know that that is perfectionism. I don't know," and and I think I viewed it as perfectionism because of, Aliza, what you said your daughter said, which was I felt like I had to be perfect to be loved as a child. And in my family, hyper efficiency in my household was what needed to be done. And so I had this phenomenal breakthrough. I was so excited to talk to you both about it and talk about it on here. And I was like flying high. And Aliza, that was really in sync with when you and I got to connect about the retreat. And it was just like such a cool serendipitous moment where we were having, all three of us are having these micro growths and macro in some ways. And then the integration piece, just like what you said, Aliza. Obviously, you have this really big thing happening with your dad. It's representative of the smaller things that are happening for me, on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure Jen as well. But the transition from getting it, and it was all about me not being in alignment with myself, right? Being told, and this is not about my childhood, right? Because at some point we have to say, yes, that's where it started. That's where the seed was planted. And we're moving on. I gotta get this figured out for myself. And understanding where it comes from is really helpful for sure. And just knowing that, oh my gosh, I'm living out of alignment when I am in that hyper efficient state. That is not my truth, because I too am soft. I too am innately flowy. And so when you mentioned what was happening for you and Jen having similar things, like it's just mind blowing to me that we have so many overlapping parallel processes happening individually, right? At some point, maybe this is another episode, but at some point, talking about the integration of,
Well, no, I think that's the crux here, because we talked about
yeah,
that a little bit. I think maybe it was last week, you and I, Karen. Sometimes our conversations just blend together. But we talked about how we can't just have to leave our lives to be okay. And that's when people talk about going to a retreat or going to a wellness vacation or whatever those things might be. That sounds maybe lovely. Honestly, right now, to me, it does not sound lovely. To me, right now, it sounds like work. And there were things that, Aliza, when you and I were talking, that made me crack up when you were like describing some very specific things and practices that you did. And you're like, the first thing I thought was, thank God I didn't drag Jen here with me. She would have walked into the center of this circle and punched me for this particular thing where she would have had to have a certain amount of intimacy and vulnerability with a whole lot of complete strangers. And I'm not as woo-woo as you guys are. I'm just not,
I think that you would have been plotting my murder.
I mean, I love you too much to do that, but I might have like had some sort of revenge
when I
figured
heard
out.
about it, I was like, yeah, I could see that.
You know, so one of the things, this is kind of interesting, I think, that relates to all of us is, so one of my intentions that I wrote in the beginning of this year, actually with Jessica and the Women's Purpose community, was, my yeses are with clarity and my nos are effortless. And part of what I realized through those couple of days were that I was saying yes to things that I wanted to say no to. And I think that that's what you were saying, Jen, right? It's like we're saying yes to these things that we actually are very clear they're a no, but we're almost trying to make the excuses of why they can be a yes instead of just knowing, yes, this is it. No, this is not. And one of the things that I kind of wrote at the end of the retreat was these like misconceptions that I had about myself and about the divine feminine and how we behave. Softness is not weakness. Having clarity is not trying to be in control, and stillness isn't laziness. And those are the things that I realized I've been working through for the last however many years, but even more so now. And I actually had to write that down on a piece of paper because that feels really true for myself. These are not bad things that I'm feeling and doing and being. This is who I am. And there's so much power in that. There's so much power in being able to be soft and have that softness. It's not weakness. You've probably heard, the phrase before, don't mistake my kindness for weakness.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to tell it to myself, I'm not going to mistake my softness for weakness. It's not. It's actually a really beautiful part of who I get to be and who we get to be as women.
Yeah.
We're just, I think, told by different people in society and all the BS out there that it's not okay to do that. And it's not only okay, but it's actually far more powerful.
Well, and it's also okay not to be that, right? And I think it's also okay not to always know and to not always have the answer. And I think that that's part of what I'm learning to be okay with. So I'm not doing a women's empowerment thing, but I'm in therapy. And at the same time, I've been in this group mentorship for business that I've gone through to a smaller degree before. And I found it to be helpful with feeling more connected and energized to some of the things that I need to do for work right now. And so I thought, oh, well, this was good before, so let me do it again and for a longer period. And I'm redoing a lot of the same sort of prompts that are the get you going prompts. And I haven't gone back yet to really revisit what I said maybe 6 months ago compared to now. There are some things that are very much the same. And there are some things that are maybe not shifting, but strengthening that are interesting to me because I'm recognizing that there's a lot of ways that I feel like I'm the anti-business person, even though I own a business and I take my business very seriously and I take the responsibility I have to my community very seriously. And between things with therapy and between um, these prompts and whatnot that we're doing for the business group, it's becoming more and more clear to me the ways that it's not necessarily wrong, but maybe it's wrong for me right now. And maybe it wasn't wrong for me 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I'm seeing all of the ways that so much in business coaching and business guru are in so many ways trying to make yourself be okay by the thing that you've produced rather than just who you are. And all of these different mental tricks that you do to try and get yourself in the game and get yourself psyched up. And even one of the prompts that I did just before we got on was about creating abundance by finding opportunities to give and to collaborate or to donate to a charity or something like that. And I started it actually last night and I had resistance to it. And I finally just wrote down what my resistance was today. And I said, I literally just stepped back from something that I've given of my time and my money and my energy and my emotions and all of the things for nearly 2 decades to things. And I finally just stepped back and no, absolutely. This is actually the lesson I need is not about generosity, because sometimes generosity and the things that we are doing are not actually for us, or it comes from a place of lack. And that I felt like I had to give and give and give and do and do and do and be and be and be to be okay. And that what I actually need right now to internalize and integrate is that I am okay, even if I don't do anything for other people. I feel like there's so many of us that need that too, right? That it's not just about openness and abundance and you have to give so much of yourself so the universe lets you know to come back. Sometimes you have to say, yes, I also want that. We need to be able to speak up for ourselves and say, it's okay that I want to give my time to me or to my family. Even if it wasn't to my family, even if it's just to me, that's okay. And I don't know, maybe the balancing to come back to a place that is integrated and full and complete. There's an overcorrection that maybe I need to do right now that's going into more of a selfish era
Mhm.
because, again, it's come up in therapy that I literally said, I don't get to have a self. And I think we've chatted about it before, that it's been stuck in my brain that we are literally taught to be selfless, and that it's said so many times, be selfless, be selfless, be selfless. And how can you reconnect with yourself and your intuition and who you actually are and what works for you if you don't take some of that time to just say, no, my answer is no to basically everything, and I'm going to let you down, and that's okay. And me having to learn to be okay with letting people down.
It's so interesting, like, that your prompt was basically the exact opposite of what I was working on last week.
Mhm.
It wasn't about giving, it was about being able to balance the giving and the receiving, but a huge part of that was the receiving. The focus wasn't the giving. It was
Mhm.
being able to be comfortable not being the giver and being
Mhm.
comfortable being the receiver. It's like what we talked about before. How I wonder how much I can receive today, right? Like, I think in a lot of ways, like, for me, like, my worth was tied to what I could give and what I could do for
I
Yeah.
think
people
you're
and
saying
how
the
I
same thing.
feel.
I think you're saying the same things, both of
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It's just interesting, like, the difference in the prompts that each of us got. And what
Mhm.
you took from that prompt was like, no, I need to be able to receive, even just for myself. Like, we
Mhm.
do, like,
Mhm.
we have to be able to receive. We
Yeah.
cannot just keep giving endlessly and boundlessly. Doesn't work.
I literally had that exact like meditation, spiritual aha moment just a couple of days ago where I always will ask for guidance for my patients, for my child, for my family. And when I do that and it's beautiful and it always works. When I do that, it is a please inspire me so that I can be of service. And I had this moment of what about me? What if
Yeah.
I were to ask for myself, which was the biggest aha moment. I can't even describe what a huge shift that was in my mind. And yet, this is what we preach to the people that we work with all the time. And something is happening right now at this stage in our lives where all of a sudden it can't go on like this. And the
Yeah.
fact that all three of us are going through this in our own ways, and Aliza, to your point, different pathways, same endpoint is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and for me to recognize that I have reached a point in my life that I feel like the only way I can actually truly rest is if I've just had surgery or if I'm in the hospital. And it's because that's the only time that I am able to say I absolutely should have no expectation of doing X, Y, or Z. And that's the only time I'm able to release that expectation of myself. And the expectation doesn't necessarily come from my own internal drive to do those things, it's from the expectations of others. I feel like we've had some prompts or some things that I've sent to you guys. If you were to set down everything that other people expected you to do, what would be left? And that's a thing too that I just feel like we need to say is that, like I said before, you're not always going to have the answer. It's not always going to be that I know what to do. I know what this is. Or I know what I want. I'm in the place of transition that I've got plenty of fantasies about what I could do with myself differently. I also love what I do in many ways. There are things that I don't love about what I do, or things that I feel challenged by, perhaps in ways that I've not yet found the reward for the challenges of. So I don't have any intention of quitting because the work that I do is very meaningful and it matters to a lot of people. And it does matter to me as well. I'm working on reconciling where I am now that isn't accidental, where and who I was before, and where those things combine and integrate to live a connected, integrated life in my home, in my day to day, not having to go to a retreat, not having to do prompts from a journal. Um, and also being okay with, like, as I'm doing prompts from the journal and what do you want and what do you visualize and what do you like, I don't necessarily know. And that's what I'm like, and it's okay that I don't know. And it's also okay to recognize that sometimes we reach this point where we've got the kids, the patients, the business that we're managing, the marriage that we're managing, the aging parents. We've got all of the things that we're trying to navigate. all of the stresses that come with being in midlife too, right? Like we're at the place where our mortality is very real to us suddenly. I'm no longer in a disillusionment about my own mortality and looking forward to the second half of my life and what I want that to look like and what needs to be in place to facilitate that. Like just that mental load of trying to prepare for what's coming and having all of this happening all at one time. Where's the space to know sometimes too?
And doing the things we need to do to get to a place of realignment, reconnection, to be able to have the opportunity to know, right? Because we're talking about how the reason that we don't know, or the reason that we say yes when we should say no, is because we're not in alignment with our true selves. Like how I was taught to focus on hyper efficiency, that was pulling me out of my own alignment. That was not important to me, certainly not as a child, right? But it's also not my personality. I thought it was, but it's not. And so what I think that in this last week through my own therapy and the prompts that came up from our conversation, Jen, have led me to a place of a huge awareness and understanding of what was happening, how that was not who I am, that isn't who I am. And now circling back over and over and over back to myself. Yes, there are so many times when I don't have the answers, and I love what you're saying. It's okay, because that is a big part of this section of our lives. The messiness of this midlife is that there are going to be large chunks where we just hold tight, right? We
Yeah,
just
you just
hang
have to
tight
wait. And we have to be
and
okay
wait. Yeah.
with the like waiting and the not knowing.
And sometimes it's because I'm out of alignment and I don't have the space. And I think that's what became very evident to me this last week as well. I don't have the space and time that I need to recenter myself back to my core. I can ground myself. Obviously, I can tend to the things that need to be tended to, but the type of alignment that you described, Aliza, right? And that I experienced in this last week, and what you're describing as well, Jen, and that I got to do something different. Just that knowing, sadly, it's not a haphazard thing. And I think it's really important to highlight that because we all want that. And we all feel really frustrated that we don't have the time to create that all constantly. But when we really need to dig deep and find answers, we have to figure out how to align, how to realign with ourselves again, because it's not a constant state. Between all of the responsibilities that we have and all of the things that are constantly shifting, it's not something that, unless you're a monk in a mountain, isolated from reality, it's not a permanent state. And so we have to accept that sometimes it's like, well, until I get that opportunity to realign, I'm just in a holding pattern. And I think that by accepting that, there's a tremendous sense of relief that we're not doing something wrong. We're just not back home yet, so that we can then inform our next steps or our next decisions.
Something that struck me, what you said, Jen, when you were first talking about this, was me being clear on what I need is letting other people down. And I have to be okay with letting other people down. And like that just struck a chord with me. Like I don't want it to be that what I need to do for myself and my mental and physical and spiritual well-being is letting somebody else down. Like I don't like that story, I don't want that. I don't want that.
Yeah. And the truth is that sometimes that's a story we're telling ourselves that isn't the story that the person on the other end is telling themselves about it.
Absolutely.
I'd say probably a good portion of the time. There are times that we legitimately are letting people down. And I know that I have let some people down. I know they understand and they're compassionate because they're kind, good people. And I know that I've also let them down, and both can be true at the same time. And we have to I think right now we're just kind of in the place that we all have to be a little okay with a lot of discomfort in the shifting so that we can take who and where we are in life and who we are before any messages, wherever they came from, intervened and shifted us or handed us a mask and said, here you go. You are beautiful and you would be more acceptable with this mask on. So now you need to be organized. Now you need to be really efficient. Now you need to be perfect in your accomplishments or your achievements, perfect in how you look, whatever. We need to figure out how to be okay with the discomfort with this mask that's become part of our armor, part of how we protect ourselves from the world and the things that feel threatening to us for one reason or another. And yes, and
Elise,
figure out like that balance. I feel like there's so much just like whiplash and like jerking from one end to the other. And, before we even started recording, Aliza, you were like, I don't even know where I'm at, what I can talk about, like trying to like bring yourself back together because you felt so fragmented between being in this space where you were floating on air coming back from this really important retreat for you, and then the reality of the stuff with your dad. Messages still from the outside are, you have to do something, you have to do big, you have to do big, 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 big for it to be able to shift you out of things. But what doesn't always work, I don't think it ever works. I think it just keeps us in this yo-yo, right? It's just like diets. It's like going on a strict keto diet. Okay, it's going to be great for a while, and then it's going to be terrible, and you're going to be sick for all of the things that are going to happen from being on a strict keto diet. And so then you have the rebound and eating more like a normal person, except not really like a normal person, eating like a person who is rebounding from being on a keto diet. It's the same thing with trying to find yourself and reconnect with yourself and realign. I wish there was more magical ways to do it in your life. And I guess maybe that's what I'm trying to do. And maybe that's why it feels so uncomfortable. And maybe that's why it feels so like in a place where I just don't always know the answers, and that has to be okay. And sometimes I'm feeling all the feelings, and sometimes I'm feeling no feelings. And that's all just part of the process to do the work of realigning within my actual existence, because there's some things that sometimes I feel like I've stepped so far into this mask that the only way to remove the mask would be to like burn it to the ground. But I don't want to do that because there are so many things that this mask has brought to my life that are so good and so important, and I would never want to give up. So trying to figure out how to take off the mask without imploding everything that the mask has given me too.
yeah, we've had these masks for half of our lives. Well, half of our
Or more.
total of full
Our
lives.
total lives,
My
yes.
whole life. Yeah, my whole
Yeah.
life to this point. It is the midpoint. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there are so many things I'm so grateful for. And like in parts work and internal family systems, we never let destroy, the tools that some of our parts use, because why would we get rid of a tool, right? Like it's something that we would always want to have access to, but we're very attached to it. And removing a mask that has been on our bodies for an extended period of time reveals a rawness underneath that isn't quite ready for the elements. And so it's a process of on and off and playing with what that feels like to find to eventually develop the fortitude necessary of the true face, right, to
Yeah.
present to the world. Aliza, you mentioned the disappointment piece with Jen, with what Jen said was like not a story that you liked. I 100% am there with you. I'm sure Jen doesn't love that either. Um, I had a thought earlier this week where I had to step back from holding and managing everything in my family. And I had an awareness that if I didn't do it, things were probably going to fall apart. And I think that's the same thought of it might be disappointing to people. It might even be that they don't even realize that we're pulling back and they don't experience disappointment, but something's going to fall apart because we are juggling all of the things constantly, either
All the
mentally,
cactuses.
all the cactus balls, all the choya. And so there's discomfort for me in thinking, okay, some things are going to have to fall apart. Certainly there's discomfort for me in that. It's a little easier for me to think of it that way than to think of disappointing people, which is, I don't know, that's just my own internal mental gymnastics that I have to do in order to be able to be brave enough to rein my energy in and not give every last ounce of myself to everybody else.
Because start.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't love the idea of disappointing others, but when it became really clear to me that I was waiting to be told I needed another surgery, and I'm glad that I didn't wait because I would still be in the holding pattern because I do not have a surgery scheduled. I have the process to figure out if the surgery is actually worth it started. So I'm really glad I didn't wait for that as my excuse. But when it became really clear to me that I was creating a situation that I was not having enough of myself available for the things that really matter to me. Because even if it's taking up just mental and like stress space, like I only have so much capacity for stress inside the 5'5" that I am. And if I have 5 feet of stress from other things that I don't all have to say yes to, then what happens when the things that I can't say no to because they are truly mine that nobody else can do? Nobody else can mother my daughter. Nobody else can be a wife to my husband. Nobody else
Mhm.
can take care of my body. Nobody else can lead my business. So if it's not one of those things and I'm saying yes to that and then a stressor comes up in one of those other spaces, where's the room for it? I have to have room for it and for there to be hopefully not completely full. Sometimes it will. Sometimes I will be 5'5" of stress and that's just the way it's going to be. But then I have a chance of like dropping down and maybe only having like 2 feet of stress and having like calm in the other space. So
And dropping in, right? So
yeah,
the only way that we can drop in and realign and find our true answers so that the boundaries in our lives just flow instead of feeling like we're having to impress someone else or whatever is to have the space in your 5'5". You have
right.
to we have to have the space to do that work. And I think that was really important for me to recognize this is work. It is always going to be work for me to come back to myself. I think I always expected that there would come a point in which I would just be enlightened because I did so much work that it would just be like, oh, I'm this meditating, peaceful monk that always knows what my center feels and, the truth that comes from myself. No, that will
Yeah.
never be.
Oh, I promise you, when you said the only person that might not have to worry about things changing is a monk in a monastery, I was like, oh, and if there's a monk in a monastery listening, they're laughing so hard at you right
Right,
now
right.
because not
Yes,
even that
yes.
is possible. It's just so for me, it was a much easier thing because I recognized that if I didn't risk disappointing somebody else, I was disappointing myself or people that matter more than the other people who I was worried about. And I can't take for granted that my husband and my daughter, that they love me and no matter what, and that they will be here. They deserve that itself deserves a lot of attention. That
Mhm.
they do love me so much and don't expect me to do something specific in order to get that love and that attention. And I just got to say, I don't know if you've had this experience with some of the shifts that you've made in a very short, similar time frame to me. It is uncanny. The day after I had my conversations, when I gave myself my own therapy homework, I'm going to step down from these things. I'm going to do it today before I have my possible surgery appointment on Friday. The next day, I got an email. Can you do this? Can you do this for me? Related, but not same. So like, like a separate thing that I had stepped down from when I had been in the hospital last year. I'm not going to be able to. And then like, oh, but can you maybe hand me over to somebody else? And I'm like, I will at least make sure that I'm not doing a pendulum swing and like a whiplash thing that I'm saying no to something I should be saying yes to because I'm being in this like ultra protective space that I'm getting to for myself right now. So I'm like in the process of checking in with a couple other people in my team about something. And then I get another email from a completely different organization. It's like somehow something in the universe, in my way that I connect with people, I don't know what it is. What I put out there, the vacuum has been noticed and it is trying to be filled. And I'm having the challenge of having to say, nope, nope, nope. That's not what the vacuum was for.
I love it when woo-woo stuff happens to the non-woo-woo person.
Because
Me too.
that's what it happens all the time, right? And because I'm like the non woo woo person, I understand like what the word align means, and I understand like logically, but for some reason I'm like resistant to that word for right now, and that's something I'll have to think about. But yeah, No, the vacuum has been noticed somehow.
Mhm.
And it's just like,
Mhm.
here, do you really mean it?
Doubling down, so you have to double down.
I wanted to say actually, like, thank you to both of you because when we were starting today and I was feeling this like discombobulation of what I had felt, what I wanted to share with what was going on presently. Like, thank you for like giving me the space to be able to say to myself, like, two things can be true at once, right? Like, that's why we're talking about this because that really did let me like drop down into my heart and really like feel what I was feeling. So thank you for just saying that and giving me that opportunity to do that.
Of course. Keep
That's
on with your badass softness and your badass ability to get shit done and taken care of for your dad. Like, as you said at the beginning, we have to lean into all sides of ourselves. Maybe that's what the answer is. Maybe it doesn't have to be like fully integrated. Maybe it's just being able to connect with and lean in. And sort of as you said, Karen, that from the family systems perspective, our parts and their tools serve a purpose. So maybe what it is that we need to recognize that it doesn't have to be a permanent state, right? It doesn't have to always be fully integrated, that it can be that we lean on the parts that we need for the situation at hand. And that sometimes it might be a blend of the two, right? You know, with your daughter, Aliza, right now it's working to have some softness where you're reconnecting with what you mean to each other. And you might have a time that comes up that you got to be a little bit more strict because it's reached a point that you're like, I realize that you're not getting consequences at school for being late, but it's disrespectful and it's rude to me and my time. And it's not showing me how you care about me. I think maybe the thing that we need to recognize is that it's not about like a steady state that we don't have to have this thing that we reach here and we've accomplished, sort of like you were talking about earlier, that, you know, you're going to do all this work and then you're just going to be always ready, like the super meditative monks like state. That instead it's a fluctuating thing and that we borrow the things that we need at that time. We have the softness when we need it. We have the more strictness or sternness when we need it. We've got the protective parts and we've got the receiving parts. We've got the giving parts. And that sometimes there's going to be things that are going to overlap and that we're going to need multiple aspects of ourselves. And maybe that's what we need to understand is the point of integration. It's not a steady state. It's an ebb and a flow and an ability to access the thing that we need for the circumstance and the time that we need it. And also recognizing when we can't access it, that's a sign that maybe we've gone a little bit too far and that we need to just take a little bit of a step back so that we can access those things that we know we have and that we feel reconnected to. We just don't have to always be feeling them all the time.
And when we can't access it, understanding and leaning into the fact that this is okay. This is expected. You are not alone. This is what happens in this messy stage of life. We have gaps between when we feel able to access something and when we can actually get to it.
Right. And our pursuit of perfection in those moments where we feel so in flow and so connected, if we seek that all the time, of course, we're going to
That's the
have nothing.
suffering.
We're going to have mostly suffering, right?
Yes,
If we're
that's the
constantly
suffering.
seeking and grasping, it's the true contentment is in not always seeking joy, right?
Yeah.
True contentment is in accepting all of the aspects
It's
that come.
messy.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
messy. It is messy and the flow comes and goes, and never has that ever been more true than in this messy midlife. All
I'll
right?
think about that.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good thing to sit with for the next week.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Love you.
If our messy is your kind of messy, we'd love for you to rate, review, and follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
We'd also love to know what's on your mind. If you were to join us, what would we be talking about? Email us at messymidlifepodcast@gmail.com or message us on Instagram or TikTok.